Hey, Dr. Amber here. Today's episode is part of a 10-part series for my virtual book tour. Yes, I am going on tour virtually, and I'm having 10 amazing conversations with people that I know and I really admire around the topics of overwhelm, overstimulation, dysregulation, all in preparation for my new book, A Parent's Guide to Self-Regulation, a practical framework for breaking the cycles of dysregulation and mastering emotions for parents and children. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. This conversation I really enjoyed, and I think you'll get a lot out of it too. And also, don't forget to order your copy of the book. You can get it on Amazon, Target, Walmart, Barnes & Noble, literally wherever you buy books. Okay? Enjoy the episode, and we'll talk soon. Hi, good evening, everyone. Dr. Amber here, and this is tour stop number 5, my virtual book tour for A Parent's Guide to Self-Regulation. I actually have the book today. Look at that. It's so beautiful. So today we are talking about breaking cycles of dysregulation through reparenting. So if you are interested in the topic of reparenting, if you want to know how to break cycles of dysregulation, especially those generational cycles of dysregulation, this is the talk for you tonight. I do have a guest. Tiffany's going to be joining us any minute now. So until she does, let me just tell you all, I am so excited about this book tour. I am so excited about the book. I got my copies as an author last week. I've got my copies here. And so that just means that you all will be receiving your copies in about a month. So pre-order your copy so you can get yours just like I have mine. But let me add Tiffany now so that we also stay tuned. Okay, I think Tiffany is joining us. Let's see.
Hey
Hi.
Amber, how are you?
Great. How are you?
I am awesome. I'm excited for this conversation.
Same. So I had 10 conversations planned in this virtual book tour. I feel like this one is probably the one I'm most excited about because I really, really love the topic of reparenting. And
Yeah.
so you were just the perfect person to talk about it because I know you
Aww.
have had private conversations about reparenting.
Oh
And
my gosh,
and
so many.
love the direction that you're going on your page
Hmm.
about talking about it. So I very much look forward to this conversation tonight.
Yes, I'm excited.
Yes. Well, you all, so we are here, and I already kind of let them know what we're talking about. But again, for anyone who is not aware, I'm clinical psychologist, and now author of this book right here, A Parent's Guide to Self-Regulation. And so tonight we are going to be celebrating the launch of this book. The book releases June 18th. And in celebration, we're having some amazing dynamic dialogues around the topic of emotional dysregulation. And today specifically, we are talking about how to use reparenting to help break cycles of dysregulation. So
Mhm.
I've already introduced myself. Tiffany, you go ahead and introduce yourself.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Amber, so much for having me be a part of this conversation. I am so excited for the book. I am Tiffany. Uh, I have a lot of different life experiences. By training, I am a health administrator, and so I've spent time studying healthcare administration in academic medical centers, nonprofit settings, government settings, so many different settings. And what has led me here in my work is one, becoming a mom, and two, becoming a doula. I was a kid from as early as, I don't know, 7 or 8. I was totally obsessed with the baby story on TLC. So I knew that always wanted um, to be a mother. And I always knew that I had this fascination with pregnancy. And so going the route of becoming a doula after becoming a parent, and then after becoming a parent in the middle of the pandemic, and I'm like, oh my God, I have so much stuff in there to heal. And I realized how so much of my own inner child work came to the surface as a result of having a child. And around this time, I birthed what I call now Birthing the Empress Within. And it's essentially an organization organization, a community, what have you, that I started that really talks about how as a child is being born into this world, so is a mother, so is a parent, so is a father, whatever you choose to call yourself, that is also born in that birthing process. And we have to tend to that, right? We have to tend to that, and we have to tend to that person outside of who our children are, because it's very different. We have to care for who our inner child is, and then we have to heal that so that we can be the best parent. So, long story short, I've had an interesting journey. Health administrator by training. I'm a doula, Black maternal health advocate, and actively and currently on my own reparenting journey.
Shout out to the reparenting journey. Oh, Tiffany, I love all the things that you do. And I also love how it all just kind of comes together. But I think there's this interesting piece that I know that we'll talk about today is just how becoming a parent um, kind of brings this new awareness
Mhm.
around your own inner child.
Mhm.
Um, I think that's something that's fascinating and that I've noticed professionally, but then also personally in my own
Mhm.
life. And also, anyone watching today, if y'all have questions about reparenting, emotional dysregulation, please put them in the chat. We will
Mhm.
be paying attention to all of that. Or any comments that you all have, definitely feel free. We'll be reading comments too. But man, I'm trying to think where to even begin. Like, I just know this is like such a deep, deep conversation, but
Yeah.
thinking about like, and I'll ask you and then I'll answer too, but like, when did this topic of reparenting even come about for you? Like,
Mm.
when did you even have a concept or awareness for this idea of reparenting?
I don't think that I named it necessarily reparenting, but I was feeling it and going through it for a very long time. So I think definitely somewhere between pregnancy and Nova becoming 3 months old. So I was like, there is a lot of stuff that is coming up here. And particularly around my childhood, my relationship with my parents, and some of the things that I feel like I was really needing, the nurture, even in the postpartum journey. We have so many ideas of what postpartum will look like. And in my head, very much, I was like, I want to be taken care of. And I had to really dive deeper into that to say why. And I went back. And it was some things from childhood that I felt like I really lacked, or I really needed, or desired, or wanted. So I think I became very, very aware of it during my postpartum journey. I have the privilege and honor of being married to a therapist who was very helpful in helping me name exactly what it was. But I was definitely going through it for longer than I realized it was actually the reparenting journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's glad you said it like that because actually now that I think about that too, if I were to answer that myself, I feel like, yeah, I probably was thinking about this, but didn't have the language for
Yeah.
it, know what it was. And maybe even, I would say for myself, probably even a little bit before I started to have children. And maybe when I like moved away and then when I got
Hmm.
married, that's when I started about me and my relationship with my parents and just thinking about
Hmm.
myself and just yeah just realizing like I feel like there's some things that I'm still needing
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
still needing that
Hmm.
ideally I would have loved
Absolutely.
to be
Yeah.
a child, and then even more so when my kids came to be.
Oh my
It's like
gosh.
kids are like a mirror of all the
Mhm.
so many childhood memories, positive, but then also not so positive, or even
Yep.
neutral. There's like this spotlight on, ooh, this is what I feel like I still need, or this is
Mhm.
what I've had,
Mhm.
or this is what I think I need to work out. These
Mhm.
I still have feelings around.
Mhm. Mhm.
And very much brings that out.
Mhm. Mhm. It really, really does. It's like, oh my God, I thought the pregnancy was the hardest part, and then they come out, and you're like, what is going on? You know?
Yeah. Yeah, and it really is like the the pregnancy is hard, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Recovery,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely hard.
Yes.
Toddlers, very, very. But I think, speaking to like the ongoing like emotional pull that parents
Yeah.
will do
Mm-hmm.
for you. You know,
Mm-hmm.
there's so many emotions that come about with parenting, but then also it's like not only the emotions that you're having for and about your children,
Mm-hmm.
but also the reminders and sometimes even some triggers for
Yeah.
some things.
Absolutely.
Wow.
It is so it's insane. It's like clockwork. I work with a lot of people postpartum in my doula work, and we have the pregnancy, we have our concerns, we go through labor, and then after you're like, oh my God, mother wound, inner child wound, dad wound, like immediately. It's just a thing that, I think a lot of, we just don't know a lot about it. And I honestly wish I had some sort of warning sign going into it, but it really does come online, and our children really, they really, they illuminate all of it, like you're saying. That they are a mirror. Every day I look at Nova and I'm like, okay, I learned something else about myself today, and my response to you is showing me that
Mhm.
there's some things to work on.
Absolutely. And so in the
Mhm.
book, which I have right, I talk about reparenting in chapter 5. So for
Okay.
anyone who has not yet pre-ordered your copy, please pre-order your copy of this book so that you can dive in deep, but then also
Hmm.
if it's a topic for you that you're very interested in,
Hmm.
chapter 5 is, and in it I talk a lot about what reparenting really is, and the way that I like to explain it, it's like this reworking, or this, I'll go with reworking of your relationship with yourself, but your inner child. It's recognizing who your inner child is, getting connected with him, her,
Hmm.
they, and
Hmm.
also getting in touch with, okay, what is it that they need? How do they care? Who is this person within me that still may need something?
Hmm.
And this comes up in parenting, I believe, because when we become parents, our attention really shifts. Our whole priority shifts, and it's no longer about us, it's about our children, as it should be. But then sometimes I think that inner child within us, it's like, but hey, what about me? What
Yeah.
about me? Still hurting here. I still need this. And so I feel like that's why that one is just becomes so activated when we have our own kids, because your inner child was like, wait, but I'm right here.
Hmm.
You know, that your child is getting all this, but what about me? I might have needed that too. Oh, you're giving that over there, but what about me? I actually need that too.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's
so
actively happening.
And I know for me personally, and feel free to speak to this for yourself too, I think there was something about emotional closeness and vulnerability that I think was definitely something that came up for me in terms of my journey, my active reparenting journey. I knew that I wanted to have a very close and open, intimate relationship with my children, but then getting in touch with my own inner child, realizing, oh, I'm not sure if that's something that I actually received. All of my needs were met. My parents provided for me very well, but I think many of us in our generation can say this. There's something about that emotional closeness or that vulnerability, or maybe for some of us, it might be a lack of physical affection,
Hmm.
and about people saying, I never heard my mom or dad say they love me or they're proud of me.
Hmm.
About that emotional closeness, intimacy, affection that I think our generation specifically may have missed.
Yeah.
And is what that inner child is craving. But
Hmm.
for everybody, and
Yeah.
you're needing and wanting something
Yeah.
different.
No, I certainly feel the same way. I think, that I had a lot of the things I desired, most of the things I needed, the emotional closeness, intimacy, and vulnerability, hands down, was one of the things that I feel like I needed a bit more, to be quite honestly. I'm a Cancer, like through and through,
Oh,
okay? Yes. So I think that I really needed a level of emotional closeness. I have such a sensitivity that is just, it's out of this world. And for, some period of my childhood, that wasn't always seen as a gift. And so I've had to lean back into that as being a gift. My sensitivity is beautiful. And, I think with the different challenges that I've had over the years, I think that I have had to realize that it's a gift. I've had to realize how to use this in an effective way, but also be able to receive it. Because it's one thing to desire it, but then to learn how to receive it. So I've been reparenting in my marriage, in my child, with my child, and then I had the nerve to go and have a Cancer child. So
all of
there you have it.
all of it.
Yes,
Yes. Ooh, I can so relate to that. And so y'all may not know, me and Tiffany also we love our
we
astrology.
sure do.
I'll put terms today as well. Um, I'm a Scorpio.
Hmm.
So um for me it's depth.
Yeah,
I want to go to the bottom of the
yeah,
ocean.
yes.
Know everything about you. I want to know the ins and outs. Like closeness to me is like how deep can we go? Like in our
Mm-hmm.
closeness. And I think for me that is not something that I experienced
Yeah,
growing up. And
yeah.
the child is always like, okay, how deep? Who am I getting deep with?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so it's just so funny. And I think there's this other piece that we can talk about too. Part of my process was, how do I recognize what my inner child wants, but not put that on my child? Because just because my inner child is wanting something and maybe didn't get it, it doesn't necessarily mean that
Exactly.
my children.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think sometimes if we're not careful, we may
Yes,
mistake what our inner children need with what our actual children need.
exactly.
And
Exactly.
how do you know the difference?
You are so right with that. I think I made a post a couple months ago, and I was saying, we have to get clear about what our inner child needs, because if we try to parent our own kids based on what our inner child needed, you will spend a lifetime in conflict, because that is not what your kid needs. And I think it's kind of difficult to understand what that difference is. I always try to have like self checks, like what's going on, what is this something that Tiffany needs. Even sometimes it can be easy to over identify with your children, right? And so I'm like, okay, is this Nova or is this Tiffany? Is this little Tiffany? And so I really have to ask myself, is this little Tiffany? Is this teenage Tiffany? Like, who is this that's showing up right now? And I think I have to take it case by case, because I know that there were certain things that I desired as a kid, and I've seen myself even trying to do those things with Nova, and she's like, I'm good. Like, this is what I need in the most noble way
Yes,
possible. But you're very right about that. I think we definitely have to get clear about what our own inner child needs versus what our own children need. And I think it's really being present to our own kids, like present to the person in front of me. What do they need? But the wires can get crossed.
absolutely. I, and I think that's how, so pulling in this other topic of like dysregulation, emotional
Mm-hmm.
dysregulation. I was actually asked your input on this, but
Mm-hmm.
I that's where this other piece comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Not aware of what our inner child needs, I think that's how we can become emotionally dysregulated, because we're essentially parenting with our own unmet needs. You know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
having your needs met, whether they're physical, mental, emotional, social, relational, things are not going to feel good.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a lot of there's going to be pain, there's going to be conflict. And so
Yes.
I think that's how it comes in. But for you, how do you bring this piece in? Like, I guess in your mind, what happens if you're not reparenting, and how does this emotional dysregulation piece play out?
Yeah. So Amber, we've talked about this before. There are some things that just really grind my gears about being a parent. Like there's just
Yes.
these things, this list of things that I just know I'm going to immediately be dysregulated by. And one of those things is whining. For me, I mean, it literally drives me up a wall. And with whining, I think what coincides with that is wanting to feel like if I say a thing, then my child listens. Like if they don't listen, not listening and whining, like I feel myself going, and I'm like, now I'm not always able to catch myself in the moment, but when I am, like once my kid is in bed and I'm looking through pictures on my phone or something, and I'm like going down a spiral, I'm like, okay, why were you so upset by this thing? Like, what was going on? And then, I have tried to use that time as a time of reflection. So I'm like, okay, did you whine a lot as a kid? I start asking myself questions. Do you remember whining a lot? When did you feel like people listened to you? And I'm like, maybe I didn't always feel like people listened to me. So I'm like really trying to make sure she listens. Like if I said we're not doing this right now, I need you to listen. And so I think that I try to do it in the moment, but I do have these real moments of being like, okay, I feel like I reacted in a way that wasn't how I desire to be. Sometimes I actively feel my heart racing, or I act like physically I feel it in my body, and I'm like, why am I so irritated? Like this wouldn't normally be such an irritating thing. And so I think that's often my signal that is something else underneath there. Not in the moment, Dr. Amber. I'm not always connected to that. But that's why I will go back to my child and say, you know what? I apologize because XYZ, I love you and I never want you to think XYZ. And so I think whenever I'm feeling like I need to be in control for some reason, or I need to be listened to, or I need to be heard or something, those are signals to me that it's probably something going on from my inner child, my childhood journey.
Yep.
Mhm.
Ooh, yes. All of yes. And with that, go buy the book so we can fix it.
Yes,
Like, yeah,
yes.
like absolutely, like absolutely. And so, first of all, what I will say, because I know you said it's not always in the moment.
Mm-mm.
The learning doesn't always happen in the
Yeah.
moment. A lot of big learning for us as parents happens after the fact. Like
Mhm.
after you've done the thing, like you've yelled, you snapped, you like were whatever, impatient. The reflective piece, and then the sitting piece, and then the checking in with ourselves.
Mhm.
That's where we really learn,
Mhm.
this is what went on for me. This is what was happening for me. This is what I'm actually feeling. This is what I really needed. And this is
Mhm.
me. And so these moments, I mean, we're imperfect. We're supposed to be imperfect parents. And
Yes.
that is what helps us to be better, not to
Mhm.
become be better next time.
Mhm.
And so this, of course, this doesn't happen in the moment.
Yes. Absolutely not.
Learning happens after so that we can apply it next
Yeah.
time. So real what you said. It's like, same. I have a lot of parenting triggers, and in the book I talk about parenting triggers. I have a whole chapter on how to identify your parenting triggers.
Yes.
Real. There are things that your children will do or things that come up in parenting that really bring on a big emotional reaction for you.
Mhm.
And emotional reactions can be out of proportion to what's
Mhm.
actually happening. And
Mhm.
so a key, hey, this is something I need to check in with myself about. And sometimes we will find, this might be related to something that is going on in my inner child.
Mhm.
Maybe
Mhm.
that, to use your example, maybe it's that I wasn't allowed to whine
Yes.
as a child, but
Yes.
needed that space to express myself, and that was the only way I knew how.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's, no one listened to me when I was trying to communicate, so I had to resort to
Yeah.
whining. And so now when I whine, it's a reminder of how I'm not listened to. Things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But they're also very common, these
Mm-hmm.
associations. And so that's why it's so important to go on these reparenting journeys to really figure out what actually happened for
Yeah.
me and what that I still need, and how can I help to soothe and to comfort the inner child that is
Mm-hmm.
still very much present inside of
Mm-hmm.
me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's a mouthful. It's so important because I don't think I realized this before, but I now realize that if I neglect my own inner child to be the best parent that I could be for my own child, I'm never going to be the best parent that I want to be for my own child. Like, either I'm neglecting my kid or I'm neglecting me. And I think the journey is trying to figure out how to nurture both of those at the same
Oh,
time. I'm like, girl, why couldn't you figure this out before you had kids?
everybody did. How?
But I think some of the things that have come up wouldn't come up until have go on this part of the journey.
Yes. And which kind of, in some odd way, gives me some comfort,
Yeah.
because it's like, okay, to happen. Like, this
Mhm.
was never going to come up. I was never going to evolve and move to the next level of myself
Yeah.
until my children
Yeah.
came to the, relearning myself in a different way or taking care
Mhm.
of a different way.
Mhm.
But that you made, very much key. The balance is, how do I nurture my children, but then also
Yes.
myself? Like, I think the big takeaway here is that this is why these reparenting journeys are so essential, because it's essentially you realizing, hey, my parents are not going to do this for me anymore. Maybe they're not capable, they may not be with us anymore.
Mhm.
Either way, this is a journey I have to do for myself.
Yeah.
And that can be hard for some people to accept. Um,
Mhm.
Also, the balance
Mhm.
of like, how do I this little person inside of me
Yeah.
when I have outside of me?
Mhm. Mhm.
I have to balance that, because if not, this is how dysregulation happens.
Exactly.
It's like, and so this is how, another image that I have, and you
Yeah.
tell me about it. I sometimes think of a reparenting journey as like, literally within me, there's this little toddler that's like pulling for my attention.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I have toddlers, but then there's this little child inside of me that's like banging on inside.
Mhm. Mhm.
About me? What about me? Imagine if you keep ignoring the child, or
Yeah.
imagine if you continue like dismiss the child or say later, later. They're gonna get upset. They're gonna get
Yeah.
dysregulated. There's gonna be
Oh my
tantrums. Like,
God.
so when that is happening, when your little child inside of you is doing that, what does that look like? Irritability. It looks like anxiety. It looks like
Yeah.
rage. It looks like lack of presence because you're too zoned out, because you're overwhelmed. It
Yeah.
looks like other signs and symptoms of emotional dysregulation.
Mhm.
A lot of that could be managed by going
Mhm.
on a journey. And this is why I think this topic of, we can actually break some of these cycles of dysregulation by embracing this
Mhm.
concept of reparenting.
Mhm.
Sometimes
Mhm.
there's a part of me that has needs
Yeah.
unmet, and I have to learn how to tend to these needs so
Mhm.
that the inner toddler in me is not going crazy.
Yes. I think you're so right, Amber. And I think, it's very similar to the mom guilt or parent guilt that we experience with our own physical children. I
Mm-hmm.
believe that's the same with our own inner child. Like, whether you're like, oh, I know little Tiffany is hurting in the inside, but I didn't have enough time to pay attention to her today. Or I really need to give something to little Tiffany, but I don't have the capacity when
Yeah.
my little one is running around here doing this. And that, like,
Mm-hmm.
conflict. It's a conflict of interest sometimes. Like you're saying, I 1000% can see how it creates irritability. It can create anxiety. It can create all of these things. So I think that there's a level of guilt when we recognize that our inner child might need things that we aren't tending to. And I know I experienced that too. And so I really try to be without judgment. You know, when I notice it, I'm like, okay, I haven't been paying attention to little Tiffany in this way. I'm going to be intentional and do this. And I think a huge, huge thing for me has been play with reparenting. And when I say play, it's not always like skipping around or jump roping and things, but it's being childlike. And in those moments where I'm irritable or something, I try really hard to like make light of it in a playful way. Like whether I'm talking to Nova and she's not responding in the way that I want, I might just force myself to smile or do something that's like childlike so I can connect back to my own inner child, because I know in that moment it's like the present day Tiffany stuffing down little Tiffany and wanting control or wanting whatever I want in that moment.
Oh, like that. It's funny. It reminded me of my kids. So, in astrology talk, I believe that air signs are like some of the most playful people. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I just are. Uh, my Gemini son plays all day, like too much play. I play too much. We don't
Yeah.
play. It's bedtime. Stop play. He loves to play. He cannot be serious. And so, but I feel like my kids kind of pull that out of me. I realized that it's really hard for me to be playful sometimes, because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I can be so uptight, or I
Yeah.
can be so like rigid,
Yeah.
and they really pull for this play in me. And then it reminds me, oh, I do think there's a part of me, little Amber, that just needed more playfulness,
Yes.
or it um to not feel worried or scared. And when we're just playing, when we're like fluid and just playful and just, free,
Mm-hmm.
that helps to cope with the worry and the anxieties. And so I think play is helpful for me too. And I,
Mm-hmm.
for my children, they ensure that I'm playing
Oh,
in some
oh my
ways.
God.
So much
Yes.
play. Oh
Yeah,
my
that play
gosh.
part is very important. I think Nova also is very physically affectionate. I mean, hugs all day long. I love yous. You're like so much. And for me, like I said, I desire these things, but Tiffany is learning how to receive these things. And so it can be a bit overwhelming sometimes. And I have to like check myself in the moments where I'm like, but this is just affection. She's just telling me she loves me. Like, I think
Yeah.
it's beautiful, but I am learning how to receive it. And it reminds me how deeply that probably was something that I desired and really, really needed and didn't get to the degree that little Tiffany is still longing for.
And that just reminds me, I think with reparenting, we all need to be open to whatever emotions come up, or whatever experiences we feel. Because, like you're saying, there's this process where you're having to learn how to receive the affection, the
Yes.
way that she wants to love you, or
Mm-hmm.
that she cares. And
Mm-hmm.
back a few minutes ago, I was thinking about how there's this other part for some people, not everyone, where once they start to realize that there's some unmet needs, they might feel some resentment or some anger towards their caregivers or towards their parents.
Mm-hmm.
Fair
Mm-hmm.
that I have to go through this journey. It's not fair that I have to do this stuff on my
Yeah.
own now. It's not fair, or there might be people who have other feelings about this journey. But I just want to say, whatever feelings come up for
Mm-hmm.
you when you're actually tapping in and reconnecting
Mm-hmm.
with the person inside of you, embrace it,
Mm-hmm.
accept,
Mm-hmm.
it. Try to be as non-judgmental as possible about the feelings,
Mm-hmm.
because they're there for a reason. And if you're really curious about, this is how I feel,
Yeah.
what is there, just
Mm-hmm.
get, and I assure you that as you move through that feeling and really just be present with it, it'll help you more about yourself, and then also help you to learn how to soothe and cope your inner child.
Mm. That is so good, Amber. I'm so, so glad you said that. I think, I had a hard time with even describing the healing that I'm doing as reparenting, because I was like thinking, okay, well, if I had to reparent, that means my parents were horrible and they did these extremely terrible things, and now I have to just go and do it all over again. And I've learned over time that your parents could have been great, amazing. They could have done a lot of things right, and there still could have been needs that your inner child really, really desired and needed. And you can go back and reparent yourself. And so I had to be okay with even talking about it openly and publicly, knowing that um, I'm not saying that my parents were horrible or they did everything wrong. I'm saying that they might not have had the capacity, the resources to do all of the things, to be able to give me all of the things that Tiffany needed. And so I am on that journey now, and I see how that journey can help me be a better person, a better wife, and ultimately a better parent, to help with some of this dysregulation,
Absolutely.
or at least awareness of it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
I had a similar process. For a while, I felt very guilty. Like, okay, if I'm talking about reparenting, does that mean that my parents sucked? And it's, well, not exactly. That's
Yeah.
it. And actually, it's funny. In the book, I was actually just looking at this page again. Chapter 5 is where we talk a lot about
Okay.
for anyone who has not pre-ordered your copy, please do so. There's a few myths that I talk about with regard to reparenting, and one of them is people assume that if you need to reparent or go on a reparenting journey that you had a bad childhood. And that's not necessarily true. For
Mm.
well, yes. A lot of I would I'd have been a lot of mistakes
Yeah.
that that's the reason why they are now embracing a reparenting journey.
Hmm.
But some people, they could have had an amazing childhood or, a really good relationship with their parents. And because realistically, parents are imperfect, parents don't always have capacity. Sometimes our personalities are just different from our children. Like my child might need a lot of play and I'm just a very serious
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
These like very common mismatches that occur doesn't mean that the parent wasn't loving or didn't try their best, but maybe they just did not have the capacity or the skill to meet a certain need.
Hmm.
And so going on a parenting journey does not require a traumatic or
Yeah.
a bad childhood. It doesn't mean
Hmm.
parents um, were
Hmm.
terrible at parenting at all. It just means that realistically, we will not always meet all of our children's needs. And I think that's something we have to accept for ourselves as
Hmm.
parents too. A
Hmm.
lot of millennials right now, we're trying to do a lot of breaking all the cycles with our parents.
Okay.
And
Okay.
also have to accept we're not going to do everything right. Like our children probably still will go to
I was like,
therapy and say,
I'm waiting on the day Nova calls me to the couch, and I will gladly go and we can talk about it because I
talk
just
about it
know.
because I'm probably not meeting every single one
No.
of my child's
Hmm.
needs. That's just the reality. So no, you don't need to have had a bad or a terrible
Yeah.
childhood to parenting. And another myth I addressed in the book, you don't have to have PTSD or having been traumatized to need reparenting either. You know,
Mm. Mm.
yeah, there maybe was abuse or neglect or experiences like that they experienced that necessitate the parenting journey. But for other people, it's just, emotional unmet needs
Mhm.
that or maybe just some pains or hurts or just things that maybe were unexplained or uncertainties
Yeah.
that need to still be addressed. No, it
Hmm.
rise to the level of trauma, post-traumatic stress, none
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah.
We all can benefit from some level of reparenting.
Oh, absolutely. To anybody, parent or not, especially for parents, like, I mean, I look at Nova sometimes and I'm like, this is literally my inner child walking around. Like sometimes I see the mirror, like I see it sometimes, or it's eerie sometimes how she does things so similar to what I might have done when I was younger. Around the same age, it's just like, okay, I see it. Like, we're mirrors. I got it.
That is so funny. And it's so,
uh-huh.
again, everybody's parenting journey is so different. I'm having the opposite experience with my kids.
Mm.
I thought my kids would be more like me, and they're so different. And so
Ah.
interesting to me because it's helping me realize, oh, like you can be different in the world, and that's
Yeah.
okay. Like I know that sounds so simple, but I love raising children who are so
Yeah.
different from me
Yeah.
to look at things different and give me a different
Mm-hmm.
perspective. That has been beneficial to me.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I sometimes I wish I had that because it's literally like Nova's walking around with a mirror in front of my face. Like it literally, it's a check every day. I'm like, oh, okay, I did do that, and she's just acting out what I. Okay, I got it. It's humbling.
So funny. Oh my gosh. Well, I know we're almost out of time.
Yeah.
If anyone has any other questions or comments, please let us know.
Hmm.
Like any other thoughts, any other comments, like anything else about this topic that's on your mind.
Yeah. So I would just say, in my work as a doula, specifically starting around birth and postpartum, especially postpartum, it is like just a natural thing that your inner child stuff, particularly mother wound, is going to come to the surface. I mean, it just is. When you even begin to think about as early on as who you want to have in the room when you have the baby, like all of these different things, you start thinking about boundaries, how you relate to boundaries, how, is somebody going to come 2 weeks after? So these things start so early in the parenting journey that by the time you get to your child gets a little older and they're not necessarily an arm baby, they're toddlers and they're moving around. That mother wound stuff has already been there and it's been brewing and it's been brewing and it's been brewing. And as your kid, they get more of their personality, it's like it just gets there. It just takes you there. So I just encourage anybody who's listening to know that like it's a very normal thing to happen. And like you said, Dr. Amber, you don't have to have had a traumatic childhood or even horrible parents. Your parents could have been amazing, and this reparenting journey can still be so necessary. I often tell the people that I work with to be the mother that you wish you needed to your
Yes.
inner child.
Mm-hmm.
And you can insert father, caregiver, whatever you need to in that, but be that to yourself, to your little you, not necessarily to your little ones because they might not need that, but to your inner child, little self, so that you can be the best parent. So, reparenting, it is hard work. It is hard work. Every time I feel like I have reached the edge, I'm like, oh, there's more there. But it's beautiful and it's helping me become a better person. So I'm so glad that you're talking about this, Dr. Amber, and I cannot wait to read this book because I am realizing how, I have my own dysregulation stuff and really trying to tie it back to my own inner child. So I'm just so grateful and I'm so excited to read it.
Cannot wait. And
Mm.
I out by reading not a whole lot, but there is
Yeah.
through chapter 5, and I felt like this could be really helpful for anyone as we close out. There is the last part of chapter 5. I give some key principles to keep in mind for your reparenting journey, and there are 5 of them, and I'm going to just say them really quickly. So there's only 4 of them, so this won't take long. For anyone who is wanting to go on a reparenting journey, not sure where to start or what you really need, these are the 4 things I want you to keep in mind. 1, you need to realize that healing childhood wounds are very important. It's very important. It's not something that we can just dismiss. It's not something that we can ignore. If you have childhood wounds, you need to really be mindful about them, learn what they are, and then really commit to addressing them. We cannot ignore this. It's
Mhm.
kind of like in therapy, when therapists say we can't ignore your feelings, like that sadness is there and it's going to look at
Yeah.
it. And with our childhood wounds, it's important to learn how to heal those.
Mm-hmm.
Self-compassion is required. And I know that we talked about self-compassion a lot in this topic today.
Yeah.
But through this journey, you're going to learn so much about yourself, and you're also going to learn the ways that maybe you are imperfect even more. You're going to that maybe you need to grow, or some areas of growth that you may have, and that is okay. And so embracing that I am an imperfect person, I was raised by imperfect people, I will continue to be an imperfect parent, but self-compassion is really required. Number three, reparenting really does call for you to recreate your own healthy parental role. Like we already talked about today, your parents, at this point, they're not going to do this for you.
They're not.
They're not, and many of them probably looking at you like, you don't even matter no more. Give me the grandkids. Like, they don't care about us no
That's
more.
the one.
And so it's now your responsibility to really care for the inner person inside of you. And like you actually just said, you get to now become that parent that you always needed or that you wanted or desired. And the part about it is like, you know what you needed,
Yeah.
you know what you want. Now you get to do this. So yes, go ahead and recreate your own healthy parental role. And then the last thing I said, identify and challenge any negative patterns. And so what I mean by this is as you go on this journey of really learning yourself more, learning your inner child, you're going to also start to notice like, hey, there's some inner pattern, there's some thought patterns here that are just not healthy for me. There's some things that I'm doing to myself that's really not nurturing. I know my inner child is really calling for more warmth and I'm really being very cold to her. Identify what are those negative patterns that are coming up for you in your relationship with your inner child, and take those and share. Helpful as a takeaway today. And again, you all can learn so much more about that. Chapter 5 is all about reparenting. But in general, I hope that you all will pre-order this book, A Parent's Guide to Self-Regulation. This book is really for anyone who wants to go on a reparenting journey, but also anyone who has noticed that in your attempts to role model for your children healthy coping, healthy emotional development, healthy emotional self-regulation, you're struggling because you maybe don't have the tools or the skills for it. This book is you. This book will help you to learn those skills and those tools so that you begin to better model for your children how to cope with hard things, how to cope with emotions, because Lord knows challenging.
Yes.
And the challenges keep coming, the emotions.
Yeah.
So now is the time to really learn how do we actually handle that for ourselves so we love differently for our own children. I enjoyed this talk today. Tiffany, thank you.
Thank you for having me. This is amazing. I am so proud of you, so happy for this book, and I cannot wait to read it.
I cannot wait for y'all to read this book. This book truly changed my life. Like writing the book, I realized who I was before I started and who I am now, very different. I'm still imperfect, but intentional. I'm a lot more present. I'm a lot more aware of the things that I need, and I want that for all of you too. So I cannot wait till y'all get.
I'm so excited, and it has been an honor to have this conversation with you.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you all so much again, Tiffany. Thank you, Tiffany. You and I will be talking soon.
Oh,
I'll chat.
absolutely.
But thank you all for tuning in. If you didn't catch all of it, I will be saving this, and so no worries. You can go back and read it, or listen to it. But then also link in my bio to pre-order your copy of A Parent's Guide to Self-Regulation.
Bye.
Bye.
Talk soon.